What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sansom Sports Media Podcast. We're your hosts, Hunter and Michael, coming at you live on March the 5th, Thursday night, headed into Champ Week here shortly. One more regular season game for most of the Power Conference teams left. Arch Madness is kicked off with Drake in Southern Illinois on the screen now. Been a kind of a crazy start to the week. You had the Northeast Conference with Central Connecticut going down. LIU and Chicago State had a really fun game. We crashed the NEC front row streaming service. So been a fun start. Mike, how's it going? Work treating you okay?
Yeah, it works. No, and we were talking off air that if there's any indication from what we've seen in the women's last couple of days conference tournaments, we're in for quite a chaotic beginning. I mean, in women's side, we've seen some bubble teams kind of fall by the wayside. We've seen some just shocking, end of games where like Texas Tech had a 14-point lead over Kansas State. It was a 16 loss team or something like that, or 15 loss. They were up 14 with 9 minutes to go, and Kansas State just scored the last 21 points of the game.
Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
Texas A&M lost to Auburn. Who knows? We might see that in the men's side in the tournament at some point. But
what conference in the men's do you think is most likely to have that kind of chaos? Is it the Big East? I mean, I feel like that's the easy answer.
Maybe that's the easy one. But I mean, there's so much after you get beyond Michigan, Duke, Arizona. A lot of those teams beyond that have looked fairly suspect of late, except maybe Florida.
Florida, I would definitely put up there with the others. I would also, UConn, while they're playing down to their competition, has found a way to win pretty consistently throughout the year. You look at Houston, Michigan State, Illinois, Purdue, Nebraska, Iowa State, Gonzaga, Kansas, Virginia, Texas Tech, and Alabama. I'm naming off those teams. Those are at 2 through 4 seeds right now. And every single one of them has taken a questionable loss or done something unexpected negatively in the last 2-3 weeks here.
Yes.
It's been really interesting to see I don't know if the long season's just getting to these teams, if they're getting kind of complacent, because those teams had been just running college basketball this year to start the year. That 16 had felt very set, very solid, and then suddenly they've regressed a little bit while those top three have continued to climb.
Not only that, but when you've got teams like SMU, maybe NC State, USC, obviously, Indiana, among others, finding their way, pulling themselves down, while you've got Cincinnati's and maybe Arizona State still looming around, Auburn's still kind of there. We've got a little ways to go in those last 10 days or so. I don't think Arizona State is going to go to Iowa State and win, but
they just beat Kansas, so
right.
You can't say no. One thing I want to call out: the hottest team in the country right now is Cincinnati.
Yeah,
and outside of those top three, who have just been clear and above the top three teams in the country, nobody's playing as well as Florida or Cincinnati right now. Obviously, Cincinnati's outside looking in. Florida's a 2 seed; they're not comparable. But Cincinnati, and I know Torvik. If you pull the filtered data over the last month and a half, Cincinnati's top 5 in the country right now in efficiency. They are playing very well, and that's the reason they went from completely off the page to one of the first couple of teams out of the tournament right now.
The one issue they still have is that home loss in November to Eastern Michigan. Now, I know they were down 3 players, but it's still an Eastern Michigan team that didn't qualify for the MAC tournament.
Exactly. And to address that head on, I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, well, the committee did this to West Virginia last year. Yes, the committee did knock West Virginia out last year. They pushed them away, and that was that. However, you are going up against the likes of Auburn, Indiana, and some of these bigger name schools. And Cincinnati has a very proud basketball history. Do not get me wrong. But you've got Bruce Pearl sitting there referring to Auburn as we and advocating for him and his kid to get into the tournament, while Indiana is one of the blue bloods when you typically mention college basketball. Cincinnati's in one of those upper tiers, but they are a step back. If it comes down to those three, brand recognition, while I don't think it'll hurt them, could be a factor.
Also, Virginia Tech season is going to come down to this weekend against Virginia.
Absolutely.
If they win it, I think they're going to make it. If they don't, unless they go on a run and win the ACC tournament,
Yeah.
which who knows? They did it few years ago.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
Absolutely. And just to clarify for the Cincinnati fans who are listening to this, I am not saying that you're not a brand. I am saying if they're looking for the media headlines, which we all think they do, they could choose to put Indiana, Auburn, and Cincinnati all in the tournament and kick out the likes of Santa Clara, SMU, VCU for those bigger brands. They very well could, but they could also do the opposite and have to pick one of those to keep in, and then it becomes problematic for everybody, honestly. I hope it doesn't come down to that, but there is an element of that could play in.
One thing that just catches my attention is what has happened in the Big Ten lately.
Yes.
Like what has really changed. I mean, you had a USC team that was 17-6 at one point.
Yep. And safely, very safely.
D1, against D1 record.
Yep.
I had them as by good shape category and not too far from putting them to up to near lock, and haven't won a game since, and one of their better players has left the team. And now if they don't beat UCLA this weekend, they're going to be off the page.
I am to the point where if UCLA or USC loses to UCLA, I will be shortening just the next 3 out or just going first 7 out instead. There are not 8 teams worthy of being considered for this tournament right now. No. Maybe you can argue 7 with Seton Hall, Oklahoma State, Cal being kind of in that tier, but USC is a clear step behind that group right now.
Yeah.
Starting at the bubble here, though, Ohio State is actually above Dayton for me right now. You speak of
the Big Ten. I thought so too.
And honestly, an 11 might be a little low for them. I want to look back at their stuff a little bit. TCU has the really, really high-end wins. Texas has the solid predictives and a solid schedule. Ohio State, though, they have kind of a mixture of both of those. The win over Purdue looks great. I mean, anytime you beat a top 4 seed, you're in a good spot. And suddenly, Ohio State looks pretty safely in. I know that Ohio State-Indiana game you had back in January, we had been talking about how that felt like a play-in game. Now,
not anymore.
I think Ohio State can lose it. Indiana can jump into the field, and Ohio State can stay in.
Yep. Yes. I think first off, if Ohio State wins this game,
yes,
I do not see a scenario where they don't make the tournament.
Agreed.
I mean, I don't know who they're going to play in the Big Ten tournament, but outside of like Maryland, Penn State, there are not a ton of there are not Rutgers. There are not a ton of really, really bad losses to take in the conference tournament that could knock them out.
The bad news for them is they are, as of right now, they're projected as the 9 seed, which means they would run into Maryland or Oregon. That could change if, let's say, Iowa loses tonight and then Ohio State wins. That still a lot of movement left, but they are currently the 9, would be playing that 16 or 17.
So
team.
I'll put it this way: if they beat Indiana and they play Oregon, not Maryland, but Oregon, I think they're in regardless. If they play Maryland, you want to win that game.
Yes. You honestly, you probably want to win both of them because, like I just said for Cincinnati, you don't want to be put up against some of these names where it's Auburn or Ohio State because, honestly, I'm not convinced the committee won't put Auburn in with the strength of schedule, the SEC, and Bruce Pearl and everybody's ear talking about we and everything like that. And I mean this as derogatorily as it's coming off. So please hear me on that. I was on the radio twice this week saying the exact same thing. I'll say it to anybody. I don't care. That being said, Ohio State's in a great spot, and I think that they'll be fine.
Now let's address Indiana.
Yes.
They are, as of today, 5-12 in Q1, Q2 games. They're not even 500 if you add in the Q3 wins, which are 6 of them.
Yep.
If they do not win this game, I don't see how they make the field. Because if they lose, whenever they end up getting knocked out in the Big Ten tournament, unless they end up winning it, obviously, they're going to be, depending on how the quad records get shuffled within, depending on where teams fall, probably anywhere between 5 wins to 7 wins and anywhere between 13 to 14 losses.
Yep.
That is not going to get it done.
Yeah.
I just don't think so. If they win it, they have a chance. I'm still not sure they get in the field, though.
I would agree. If we get to like a 6-12 and then you add in those 6 Q3s, there's a shot there, especially if they
It would be a road game.
Yes. Yeah. Having an extra road win, and then you would get either Rutgers or Penn State or somebody of that nature for that next game. I could hear a conversation where they get in at that point, but they would probably need to beat them and maybe even beat UCLA and Iowa, whoever it would be next in that step.
Let's go to UCLA. Not long ago, it didn't look it looked like they were in a lot of trouble. Now, even though they managed to lose at Minnesota, the wins over Illinois, USC to a degree, Nebraska have put them in pretty good position for now. The only thing,
Nebraska by 20.
Yeah. But the only thing that kept me from putting them in as a lock now was their wins over Illinois, Nebraska are very good.
Yep.
Purdue as well. All of them were at home. They're 3-6 on the road, and add in 3 neutral court losses. They're 3-9 away from Pauley Pavilion.
Yep.
If they were to lose to USC and also lose to open the Big Ten tournament, they're going to be 3-11 away from Pauley Pavilion.
Yep.
So, do I think they still?
Go ahead.
Do I think they still get in? Probably. Don't know for sure though.
Yes, I would agree with that. Their best win away from home right now is Washington.
Yep.
Which further highlights, I think, in my opinion, you're probably going to see them underseeded rather than out, which is why I still have them on the 10 line, despite maybe having a case to be over NC State. Right now, there's just not anything on the road there, and that's going to hurt them a little bit. That being said, 10-10 in Q1 and 2, you add in 3 more Q3s. They're 13-10 there. They do have the 3 quad 1A wins with Purdue, Illinois, Nebraska. They just beat Nebraska by 20. And I don't care that the last 10 games doesn't show up on the metrics. Everybody's eyes are on college basketball right now. Yes, that was a 11 p.m. Eastern tip-off or whatever. Yes, people saw that game happen.
Yeah, it happened.
Yeah. I think UCLA is in good shape, and I think they'll probably be dancing. It's just kind of a matter of placing where they'll be.
If they beat USC, I'm probably going to lock them, to be quite honest.
I don't lock teams after March 1st just out of rule for myself, but I would agree 99.9%. I would honestly agree that Texas A&M and TCU are also in that same category right now. And I think Miami of Ohio, if they beat Ohio tomorrow night in Athens,
that is going to be a fun game.
Yeah, it will be. I was at the first one for those two. It was awesome in Miami. They haven't beaten Ohio at Ohio since 2011, I believe.
Really?
That game is going to be absolutely chaotic. Yes. I'm excited to watch it, and we'll be absolutely locked in for that one. That being said, before we move up the bracket a little bit more, I did want to call out, I have Liberty, Belmont, and USF in the wrong order on this seed list right now. Belmont should be ahead of Liberty, and then USF should be ahead of Liberty. Just move those up, move Liberty back to that third number 12 seed, and then you're good. But I did want to call that out. I had a couple questions about that on Twitter today. What else stands out to you, especially that 7 through 10 line there?
Iowa. All they had to do to seal their bid was beat. And now, since they managed to fit in a win over Nebraska, all they had to do was either beat Maryland or Penn State to seal a bid, and they managed to do neither. And now they got to play. They got to play Michigan and the return game against Nebraska to finish the season.
Yep.
It is not over for them yet in terms of sealing their bid. They're in good shape, but when all you can say is you beat Nebraska at home and you beat Indiana on the road, it's not a lot.
I would again argue that they'll still be in the tournament. Now, if we're talking, let's say that you do get a bid thief out of the MAC, you get one out of the Mountain West, you get one out of the A10, you get one out of the Big East or the ACC or something like that. Maybe we have that conversation, but that many bid thieves is unlikely, highly unlikely to happen. And I think Iowa will be okay. However, don't go lose by 30 tonight.
Yeah, let's not do that. NC State, needed to keep it closer than 30 points against Duke. I mean, that was not close.
That was ugly.
It was really bad.
I hate when, and obviously every team wants to be competitive, but you should be competitive at home, even if it's 15 points. You should at least be out there fighting. That game was never a contest.
Nope, at all.
Florida State, or not Florida State, NC State, 37 and 37 for metric averages. They do have 5 quadrant 1 wins and 6 quadrant 2 wins. More than likely fine, but they're a team that I keep jumping down every time I look at them, especially with a Q4 loss.
Yeah. SMU, I mean, it's interesting. I look back at what their wins above bubble was after they beat North Carolina and figured it must have been fairly high, and it was only like 1.5 or so. And, a team that I thought was going to make it pretty comfortably just has kind of cratered towards the end of the season. And I think they're actually maybe slightly below bubble right now. It's close. And now, what they got, I mean, they lost pretty handily to Miami, and now they got to play Florida State.
And Florida State has picked off, I know we've talked about it before, several teams, and they're playing very good basketball right now. They're 9-3 in their last 12. What they're building down there is very good, and they're going to be.
Yep.
They should be back to the tournament picture next year. Just took them a year of rebuilding. SMU, 43.3 resume average. Their WAB is 46th in the country right now, so exactly that last spot in the field. And then predictive average is 42.7. Again, 43rd. I have them sitting at 43rd overall. There's 4 and 8 in quadrant 1, 3 Q2 losses, no Q3 losses, but I wouldn't be shocked if we're sitting here talking about a surprise omission from SMU, especially if they lose to Florida State here.
I'm not even sure it'd be that surprising anymore.
That is very true, especially if we're talking about Cincinnati or Ohio State having a brand issue, SMU is going to have even more of a brand issue, as would a Santa Clara or VCU. But that could come into play here.
Utah State. I think it was after they beat Memphis that if they just went 3-3 down the stretch, they were fine. Well, so far they're 2-3.
Yep.
So now, and with New Mexico taking their loss they just took, it becomes a game where New Mexico really can't really afford to lose it, and Utah State, which is barely hanging on to the 8 line, and you could easily argue UCF or Missouri above them. And if Iowa were to pick off either Nebraska or Michigan, they would certainly go past Utah State. Not. So
looking at Utah State, absolutely very volatile on the 8 line right now.
And they're depending on if they win or lose against New Mexico, they're probably going to get a not very favorable when it comes to if they were to lose matchup to open the Mountain West tournament.
Yep.
So,
I think they'll be the one. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're going to be the 1 seed either way after New Mexico lost last night, which will put them up against the UNLV or Wyoming or something.
I think, I could be wrong. If Utah State loses and San Diego State wins, San Diego State might actually end up being the regular season 1 seed. But I'm not entirely sure because I know San Diego State just beat them not long ago.
Yeah.
So there'll be some tiebreaker stuff that come into play, but
there would be if let's say New Mexico and San Diego State win both of their next games and Utah State loses, there'd be a 3-way tie at first place. It looks like New Mexico owns the tiebreaker over San Diego State. So
they do. They beat them both times.
Yeah. So then looking at that, if you're the 3 seed, you could get Boise, you could get San Jose State, and then you have to win that game.
Yep.
So good call.
So we'll see about Utah State. Not much has changed for Villanova, so there's really no point to discuss where they are. They are where they are.
They did good. I actually do want to kind of touch on them. Matthew Hodge tears his ACL they broke that on Monday. However, Nova did not miss a step against DePaul. And I understand it's DePaul, but it's not like DePaul's terrible.
This is not a 300 net DePaul team.
Exactly. So going out winning by, I think they won by close to 20 was impressive to me and kind of righted any concern I had. Nova will be in the dance 8 or 9 seed feels about right for them, though, especially if they would lose to Xavier on Saturday.
Seton Hall wishes they had a win over DePaul.
They sure do. Yeah.
Georgia looks pretty good now. Clemson, that was a really important win they had against Louisville.
Yep.
Played pretty well, I thought, against North Carolina.
Yeah.
Just don't lose to Georgia.
Just don't. Yes.
Just don't lose to Georgia Tech, please. Don't do it. Georgia Tech didn't even make the ACC tournament.
I agree, but I still don't think that's a 3.5, 4 seed line jump to get them down to where they'd be even in remote danger of that. I think that's a full seed line drop, but we're talking about moving from an 8 to a 9, not an 8 to an 11.
Thing is, though, we don't actually know where they really are. We're only projecting and guessing, We hope we know. Yeah, but yeah. I know what you mean. I just don't want to see it. Just don't make us sweat. St. Louis, we kind of discussed them. BYU, it'll be interesting to see what happens with them since they've kind of struggled since Sanders went down, to say the least. They've handed out a lot of quality wins to teams around the bubble in the Big 12. St. Mary's seems fine. Miami, I decided to take my chance and lock them.
Again, Miami.
I think they're fine. No. It's another kind of sheer volume of wins kind of a thing. I mean, they're kind of going off of a week where they beat North Carolina and won at NC State, but sometimes that's good enough.
They've got 5 quad 1 wins right now. I mean, of course, some of those are Wake, FSU, SMU, right. But I mean, there's 3 tournament teams in there. Florida State's not been an easy place to win, as we discussed. No. I mean, it feels shaky, but at the same time, it's not super shaky. There's just a lot of Q4 games on there too.
Let's discuss Alabama-Auburn, because there might not be a more important game when it comes to the top 4 line or the 4 line there, and obviously, getting into the field.
Yes.
I kind of figured if Alabama were to lose it, that automatically they drop to a 5. But you have to look at who's there. Yeah. Exactly. First off, Carolina has to beat Duke to pass them.
Yes.
Vanderbilt, yes, they did beat Alabama, but it was a home game with Alabama missing some key players in that game. St. John's lost to Alabama at Madison Square Garden. And Arkansas just lost. Granted, this was on the road by 2 points and double overtime, whatever it was, but it's still a loss. Absolutely. So maybe not. Now, if Alabama wins, depending on what else happens, I'll be interested to see where Alabama could go. And as for Auburn, if they don't win this game, they just have no business being in the tournament. I love strong strength of schedules, but I don't love 16 and 15.
If you're not 2 games above 500, I will not put you in the tournament. And it's kind of the same thing with the 30-win Miami team.
Right.
At some point, the games have to matter, regardless of who you're playing. And if you have 30 opportunities and you lose half of them, you should not be in the tournament.
I mean, other teams have strong schedules that are not 16 and 14.
Correct. I mean, look at Texas, 18 and 13. It's not much better, but it's enough better to be close. And that's
Alabama's schedule is right there with Auburn, and they're not 16 and 14.
But at the same time, with the Auburn debate, I think a lot of that just comes down to Bruce Pearl screwing his kid and those players.
Yeah.
You retire at the end of the summer, you leave them with nothing. And that roster was built for Bruce Pearl to be able to coach, for them to win some games they probably shouldn't have, and to get a 7 through a 10 seed. That roster is not a top 10 or top 10 team in the country. And a brand new coach was going to struggle with that.
I do think if Auburn wins this game, they're going to find a way into the field.
Absolutely. I'd be confident they'd make the field at that point.
Yeah.
And you mentioned North Carolina and Vandy. I don't really think anybody outside of North Carolina has a shot. I think it's North Carolina, Alabama, and Texas Tech for that final, maybe Virginia as well. For the Final 4 spot. One of them is going to fall to 5. More than likely, it's going to be North Carolina. They have to beat Duke, and they may have to beat Duke twice to do that because they're going to be on their side of the bracket. That I'm starting to think that's what has to happen.
Vanderbilt, outside of the Alabama home win, really just never got the big wins that they needed to in the SEC to back up what they did during non-conference.
Yep.
And they feel prime for a 5-12 upset too.
Agreed.
Sorry.
We'll see. It really just depends on how they end up matching up. Vandy's not a bad team. They remind me a bit of Nebraska in the same way that they had a weaker schedule, but Nebraska did pick up those good wins in conference when Vandy didn't. And that's why you see Nebraska 2 seed lines higher.
Vandy Belmont feels like a nightmare for them.
It does. I would also argue Vandy and Liberty would feel like a nightmare for them.
Yeah.
But Liberty might be a nightmare for anybody just with the way they play. Belmont also feels like a nightmare, especially for like St. John's, because St. John's just is not a perimeter team. And I think Belmont could shoot their way through that one.
Yeah. If Belmont had found a way to beat Illinois State, they might be in the spot that USC is right there. Not that would matter too much.
They were very much in that spot. I had them actually before they lost in that 8th out spot before they lost, which is why USC now shows back up because I had to put somebody.
The MVC is starting to improve, but they got too many teams in that 75 to 125 area and not enough above that.
Yep.
And none that really got enough quality wins outside the league.
And they're going to continue. It's the same issue that you're going to see with all the mid-majors. If you're good, your players are going to leave. None of these guys are going to have a blank checkbook type of donors sitting around, and the Kentuckys or the St. John's of the world are going to come in and just write a check for it. And we've seen it just so frequently, and I have a feeling it's just going to continue for a while.
Well, look what's happened with Toledo and Ohio University. I mean, those teams are always near the top of the league, but the coaches leave, the players leave. It's tough.
Yeah. Absolutely. Any thoughts on any of the top seeds? I feel like the Big Ten is probably going to occupy 2 of the 2 seeds and 2 of the 3 seeds. And then I do feel like Florida's got a real shot to overpass UConn, especially if UConn were to take a loss to a Marquette on Saturday, or right now they project to play the winner of Xavier and Butler. So like if they lost to Xavier or Butler, or lost to Marquette, I think they would fall behind Florida if Florida continued to impress like they have.
My issue is, first off, Florida has the loss to UConn, and I just don't know that they have the kind of top-end wins that UConn does.
It's fair. They also have a Q3 loss, though.
I know. Creighton,
so, I mean, at some point, like when you look at metrics, they're 4 and 5 in resume, but then predictives do have UConn at 9 and Florida at 3. So it's a very clear separation at predictive. So if a bad loss were to come for UConn and Florida pick up another good win or 2, those suddenly flip.
Right now, on a neutral court, wherever they may play, I'd probably take Florida over UConn right now.
I would almost completely agree. Florida also, just to throw this out there, is 11 and 5 in Q1 compared to just 7 and 2 for UConn.
Well, now, some of that's the Big East,
but that's your conference.
I know. I know.
It is. Q1A does lean UConn at 5 and 2 to 3 and 3 for Florida, and the head-to-head win.
Big East has to figure something out.
I think the Big East is on a decent path. I can confirm Xavier will have at least double the NIL budget they had this year. And they're looking at probably retaining 2 or 3 guys that are going to be kind of the key for the team. And they should be able to make a splash with the kind of money they have. That being said, Creighton or Marquette or Providence or somebody like that has to step up.
And hopefully a healthy roster, too. I mean, didn't Xavier have an injury or 2 that hurt them pretty badly?
Yeah, so Gabriel Pizzotto from Evansville was a super highly regarded transfer, going to be Xavier's best player. Didn't play a game this year because he tore his meniscus early season, and there was no point to bring him back once he was healthy. So health has to happen, but also NIL budgets have to happen. The Butlers, the Seton Halls, Providences even have to step up and continue to give money to these programs or they're going to fall out.
And DePaul, I mean, they play in a major city that has, really strong basketball ties.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be this much of a struggle.
And outside of UConn, I think they're the largest endowment in the Big East, if I'm not mistaken. So there's no reason. I agree.
I know now people think, DePaul, how they're so awful. Go back into the 70s and 80s and look at what they were doing then. This is not there was time where they were more popular than the Chicago Bulls were before the
Exactly.
Bulls got Michael Jordan. I'm
Yeah.
not kidding about that.
And you even saw small scale success this year. They were coming to Wintrust. The students especially were showing up. They were excited to get 1,000 students in there. I mean, a lot of Big East programs put 2,000 students in there, or not. Maybe UConn.
Is that right?
But, Xavier puts in 1,000 almost most nights. So I mean, it's there for these Big East teams. They just have to take advantage. Other than that, you've got 3 locks for the 1 seed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think
Houston's
solidly locked into a 2 spot. I don't see them falling to a 3. They're not jumping to a 1. So I think that's the nature of where you're at. And Arkansas, St. John's, Vanderbilt feel like bona fide 5 seeds for me at this point.
I don't think I've ever seen those top 3 1 seeds that feel like 3 number 1 overall seeds, but you just can't obviously have that.
There is a situation where Michigan and Duke both lose, and Arizona jumps back up to 1 overall pretty quickly. And that is significant, especially for Michigan, because Michigan does not want to play in Buffalo where they're going to likely get sent. They want to play in Philadelphia, but they only get to choose if they're the number 1 overall seed.
I think Michigan is a little vulnerable because it's more of the predictors that have them. So, because I mean, Arizona and Duke's top end wins are better.
Yeah.
Overall now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And especially with Duke beating Michigan. But we'll have to see what happens down the stretch. I think Arizona's done a pretty good job down the stretch to kind of regain themselves from their 2-game, slump. They are still a very high national championship threat.
Absolutely. I would argue the top 4, 5, honestly, the top 5 seeds are all threats to win the title. I think you can throw a Texas Tech when they play like they can and not like they did against TCU. And I really think that you could throw Houston in there despite struggling a little bit down the stretch. They still feel like a national title threat for me. But I think it comes out of one of those 7 teams or so.
There have been times, I thought Houston kind of refound themselves, but we're back to something just doesn't feel right.
It's just so up and down.
Now I don't know what I'm going to see anymore from Illinois. I don't know. But I am very interested to see tomorrow night Miami, Ohio versus Ohio. If Miami wins that game, it shouldn't be a discussion anymore.
If Miami loses or wins that game and we don't put them in the tournament, everything about the selection process needs to be revisited this fall.
Yeah.
I'm not being dramatic. I'm not trying to be like hyperbolic, but if we're having a 30-win team that can't get in, or a 27-0 team by all accounts can't get into the field, that's a problem. And it's just that simple. And I understand they haven't played anybody, and I understand all of that. But wins above bubble has them very clearly better than a bubble team against that schedule. And we've seen teams, look at TCU, look at Cincinnati. Both of them took Q4 losses that were worse than most of the teams Miami has played.
Yeah. TCU without the New Orleans loss would be in that 8 seed area and a lock. Cincinnati would be in the field, I think, without the loss to Eastern Michigan. And you can go on.
Cincinnati would be above Dayton if they didn't have the Eastern Michigan loss. That's how bad that is.
And now this isn't quite comfortable, but if Ohio State hadn't lost to Pitt, they're probably in the 8-9 area.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, Gonzaga lost to Portland. These things do happen.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but so far, it hasn't.
Yeah. And one thing, kind of as we close up here for Ohio State and Cincinnati specifically, the committee in that top 16 reveal did lean a lot on the top end wins. Ohio State, you have the Wisconsin win, you have the Purdue win. Those are great wins. Both are at home, so you might get dinged a little bit for that, but that's something to hang your hat on. Cincinnati, you beat Kansas at Kansas, which is absurd, and then you beat Iowa State at home. Both of those are great wins that could push you into the field. if the committee wants to give a little bit of leniency, especially with the Cincinnati injuries for that Eastern Michigan game, maybe they're in the field safer than we think they are.
Maybe.
I don't think that's the case, but I wouldn't be shocked if the committee was like, oh, yeah, they were missing 3 players. They got Jizzle James back after that. Everything changed when Jizzle came back. They look better. Done.
Oh, another one. Cal, they don't lose to Pitt.
They're in the field. Absolutely. Absolutely, yes.
Just because you play a bunch of Q3 and Q4 games does not mean you win every one of them.
Yeah. So we have to give credit to the teams that are doing that.
And by the way, I would love to see Miami, Ohio, and Akron both in the tournament.
Same.
That would be great. I think both. Akron may even have a better chance to win a first-round game than Miami does.
If they were both on the 12 line, let's say, playing a 5 seed, I'm probably picking Akron to win over Miami. Yeah. If they're both, let's say, on the 10 line, I might take Miami over Akron. I don't know.
I think the highest Akron can get up to is like an 11 line.
Oh, absolutely. I was more just speaking in
sure,
complete hypotheticals there. I'm probably picking Miami to win a game against a lower level opponent. But if we're talking about picking that upset, Akron, I think, would be a little bit more apt to do it. Miami's got some defensive issues, and I don't know that they could keep up.
I think Akron could get to the 11 line if they obviously win the MAC tournament, defeating Miami too.
If that happens, Miami's going to have to be in the field above Dayton. So yep. I would be worried about that.
Well, as long as Miami wins tomorrow, I don't think that's going to matter.
If Miami wins tomorrow and then loses to Akron, I think they're putting them in Dayton.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
If Miami, honestly, I'm not convinced that they would put Miami in with a loss. But I'm also willing to be wrong on that. And we'll never be saying that should happen because it shouldn't. But I'm not convinced the committee won't just leave them out. But that's enough of us rambling about Miami because we could probably do it all night.
Yeah.
With that, we'll be back here in a couple days. I am going to be at the Horizon League Championship all 3 days, so I'll have coverage for you guys there. And then I'll be at the first 4 in Dayton with coverage as well. So make sure you like and subscribe. Try to get a video recap of all the games that I'm covering as we go.
It's been a fun start to that tournament.
Yeah,
that Northern Kentucky Oakland game, I'll be honest, with 2 minutes left, I kind of, quietly blurted out, this one's over. It was not over.
I had received texts and things like, "Oh, good, you're like, I know you're going to the Horizon, like you get to see, you there," and I'm like, "Shut up!" And then suddenly it's 2 points, and I'm like, "Thanks, everybody."
There was the one possession where like the Brody had hit a 3 and got a steal, and I thought got fouled.
Yeah.
And then it was so poetic that one of the guys from Oakland hit the shot at the buzzer to make it a 1-point final.
Poetic for you, not poetic for me. I didn't have the scoreboard up, and I could all I could see.
Oh,
was
really?
The shot. So I thought they had it. Honestly, I thought when it went in there.
Oh, really? No,
so I knew
it was 80. I knew it was 4 points, so I wasn't really thinking much of it. But
so, fun fact here about as we log off, my steering wheel column on my Jeep broke last night, so I was multitasking, trying to figure out what the hell was going on with that. Luckily, it's an easy fix. All will be fine. I can't go to Knoxville this weekend now because of it. Sorry, Josh, but it is what it is.
Stuff happens.
With that, we will quit rambling. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll be back shortly.
Thanks, everyone.